In today's top stories, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has held the sign-in wide-ranging cooperation agreements between Algeria and Belarus, which open promising prospects for partnership between the two countries. The members of the Council of the Nation has adopted by a majority vote the finance bill for the year 2026, aimed at promoting investment, supporting economic activity, and strengthening the purchasing power of citizens. UN experts sounded the alarm as landmine deaths rise amid funding cuts, particularly in Sudan, Palestine, and Afghanistan. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Salmani. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, and his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko, who has concluded a two-day official visit to Algeria, signed a joint declaration on strengthening partnership and friendship relations between the two countries. The signing ceremony followed their one-on-one talks at the headquarters of the Presidency of the Republic, which were later expanded to include members of both countries' delegations. In a joint statement to the press with his Belarusian counterpart, President Tebboune hailed the signing wide-ranging cooperation agreements along with several additional memoranda of understanding, which open promising prospects for friendship between the two countries. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, welcomed the first high-level official visit from Belarus, highlighting the shared political will to strengthen bilateral relations. He noted two key milestones: the 30th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Algeria and Belarus, and the successful first session of the Joint Intergovernmental Committee in Belarus, with the upcoming second session in Algeria expected to further expand and enhance cooperation.
فخامة الرئيس، تأتي زيارتكم الرسمية إلى الجزائر وهي الأولى على هذا المستوى لتعبر عن إرادتنا المشتركة السياسية الرامية إلى تعزيز العلاقات بين البلدين. وأود في البداية أن أنوه بأنها تأتي أيضا بعد محطتين أساسيتين في مسير علاقات بين دولتينا. المحطة الأولى أننا نحتفل بالذكرى 30 لقيام العلاقات الدبلوماسية بين جمهورية بيلاروسيا وجمهورية الجزائرية الديمقراطية الشعبية، فهنيئا لنا بهذه الذكرى 30. أما المحطة الثانية فهي انعقاد الدورة الأولى للجنة الحكومية المشتركة في جمهورية بيلاروسيا بمخرجاتها المشجعة، وستكون الدورة الثانية في الأسابيع القليلة قادمة في الجزائر، فرصة هامة لتوسيع وتعزيز مجالات التعاون وبعث آلية التغلب على الصعوبات، خاصة منها عامل البعد الجغرافي.
The President of the Republic highlighted a 2026-2027 roadmap for multi-sectorial cooperation and encouraged partnership and investment across key sectors. He expressed strong satisfaction about the signing of cooperation agreements that set the bilateral partnership on a promising and sustainable path. He also welcomed the outcomes of the Businessmen's Forum, which encouraged greater trade exchanges currently very weak, and the development of investment opportunities in both countries.
تطرقنا إلى الخطوط العريضة لخارطة طريق تشمل التعاون المتعدد القطاعات في آفاق 2026-2027. وبهذا الصدد اتفقنا على تشجيع الشراكة والاستثمار في قطاعات الفلاحة والصحة الحيوانية والصناعات الميكانيكية والصيدلانية والطاقة والبحث العلمي. وأود في هذه المناسبة السانحة أن أسجل بالغ الارتياح على إثر التوقيع على اتفاقيات التعاون التي تضع الشراكة بين بلدينا على طريق واعد في إطار مؤسسة مستدام. كما أعرب عن ارتياحنا كذلك لنتائج ملتقى رجال الأعمال المحفزة على تكثيف التبادل التجاري، وهنا أشير أن التبادل التجاري لا زال ضعيف وضعيف جدا، وتثمين فرص الاستثمار المتاحة في البلدين.
The discussions addressed key international and regional issues, including Palestine, Libya, Western Sahara, and the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Both sides stressed the importance of just and peaceful solutions. For Palestine, the establishment of an independent state with Jerusalem as its capital. For Libya, dialogue, elections, and rejection of foreign interference. And for Western Sahara, self-determination under international legitimacy with support for the UN envoy. They also agreed on dialogue and negotiations to prevent escalation and resolve the Russian-Ukrainian conflict through international cooperation and the UN framework.
استعرضنا خلال المباحثات قضايا دولية وإقليمية وتبادلنا بشأنها وجهات النظر. فبالنسبة لقضية فلسطينية ذكرنا بأنه لا سلم في الشرق الأوسط إلا بحل عادل يعيد للشعب الفلسطيني حقوقه على أساس الشرعية الدولية وبإقامة الدولة الفلسطينية المستقلة وعاصمتها القدس. وبخصوص الوضع في ليبيا جددنا التأكيد على ضرورة الحل السلمي عبر التوافق والحوار بين الليبيين بعضهم بعض والانتخابات ورفض التدخل الأجنبي. وبشأن الصحراء الغربية جددنا كذلك تأكيد على الحل السياسي العادل وفق الشرعية الدولية بما يمكن الشعب الصحراوي من ممارسة حقه غير القابل للتصرف في تقرير مصيره، وعلى دعم المبعوث الشخصي للأمين العام للأمم المتحدة. اللقاء أتاح لنا أيضا تبادل الآراء حول مستجدات النزاع الروسي الأوكراني وانعكاساته الإقليمية والدولية، وكانت رؤيتنا مع فخامة الرئيس ألكسندر لوكاشينكو هي ضرورة الدفع نحو الحوار والمفاوضات كسبيل لتجنب التصعيد والتواصل إلى حل سلمي على أساس تعاون دولي وميثاق الأمم المتحدة.
For his part, the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, called the visit a historic moment, highlighting aligned positions, important agreements, Algeria's advanced progress, and a commitment to further develop bilateral relations.
It is a historic moment in our bilateral relations, and this is the first visit to Algeria, and we always look forward to improve relations between the two countries. We spoke about bilateral relations and about current international issues. President Tebboune affirmed that in fact our positions are very much aligned and our points of view strongly converge. We have concluded very important and clear agreements between the two sides. I am impressed by the immense progress achieved by Algeria in various fields. She has advanced technology. We have jointly agreed to develop our relations at all levels.
During the visit, President Tebboune has co-chaired with President Lukashenko the signing ceremony for several agreements and memoranda of understanding in various areas of cooperation between the two countries. The signing ceremony took place at the headquarters of the Presidency of the Republic. Massaud has the details.
The two countries' governments concluded an agreement on military and technical cooperation, which was signed by the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, APN, Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense, Army General Said Chengriha, and the Belarusian Minister of State for Military Industry, Dmitry Pantis. Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf, for his part, signed with Belarusian Minister of Trade and Anti-Monopoly Regulations, Artur Karpovich, a roadmap for the promotion of trade, economic, scientific and technical cooperation between the two countries. A memorandum of understanding was also signed between the Ministries of Justice of the two countries. A cooperation agreement was also signed between the two governments in the fields of scientific research, technological development and innovation by the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Kamal Badari, and the Belarusian Minister for Education, Andrei Ivanets, who also signed a memorandum of understanding in the field of higher education. Moreover, a memorandum of understanding in the field of industrial cooperation was signed by the Minister of Industry Yahya Bashir and his Belarusian counterpart Andrei Kuznetsov. Another agreement in the field of animal health was signed by Yahya Bashir and the Belarusian Minister of Agriculture and Food Yuri Gorlov. The two countries' governments also signed a memorandum of understanding in the field of agriculture between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Belarusian Ministry of Agriculture and Food. A memorandum of understanding was also signed between the Ministry of Knowledge Economy, Startups and Micro-Enterprises and the Belarusian Ministry of Economy on cooperation in entrepreneurship and innovation. The governments of the two countries also signed a memorandum of understanding on cooperation between the Algerian accreditation body, Algerac, and the Belarusian Government Accreditation Center.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, today received at the Ministry's headquarters the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa, Mr. Alvin Putz. During their talks, the two sides expressed their satisfaction with the accelerating pace of cooperation between the two brotherly countries. The two parties noted the harmony and convergence of the two countries' positions on just causes at the international or at the continental and international levels. In particular, the Palestinian cause and the Western Sahara issue, where they reaffirmed their commitment to the relevant international legitimacy resolutions and the established international doctrine in the field of decolonization. And as you followed in our top stories, the members of the Council of the Nation has adopted by a majority vote the finance bill for the year 2026, which includes several provisions aimed at promoting investment, supporting economic activity, and strengthening the purchasing power of citizens. The adoption took place during a plenary session chaired by the President of the Council, Mr. Azzouz Nasri, in the presence of the Minister of Finance, Abdelkarim Bouzred, as well as members of the government. The Director General of the National Security, DGSN, Ali Badawi, has presented in Tunis during his participation in the 49th Conference of Arab Police and Security Chiefs the experience of the Algerian police in the fight against narcotics. More with Masoud Shafi in this report.
Mr. Badawi led a delegation composed of DGSN officials to this conference, which this year focused on the emerging risks related to synthetic drugs, in the presence of the police and security chiefs of Arab countries and representatives of international and regional security organizations. In his speech before the participants, Mr. Badawi presented the Algerian police's approach to fighting narcotics, adopted by the country's high authorities and part of the national strategy for the prevention of drugs and psychotropic tablets, highlighting results such as large seizures of synthetic ecstasy tablets and intensified awareness campaigns. He also praised the Algerian police's commitment to strengthening international and Arab cooperation through coordination and real-time information exchange to effectively combat transnational organized crime and security threats, including migrant trafficking, human trafficking, and cybercrime, while leveraging developments in artificial intelligence techniques. In this regard, he called for strengthening joint Arab security cooperation to tackle threats and rising crimes, notably criminal networks in synthetic drug trafficking, considered a hybrid weapon undermining the Arab official fabric. He also held bilateral meetings with police heads from Sudan, the Sultanate of Oman, Palestine, Yemen, and Europol on shared policing interests. The conference also highlighted 2 awards for the Algerian police in the awareness film competition, recognizing 2 films among about 50 entries: exploitation of cryptocurrencies to finance terrorist operations, and highlighting the human side of police officers.
Now to the Western Sahara issue. The Special Advisor to the Secretary General of the Polisario Front for Natural Resources and Legal Affairs, Ubi Bushraya Bashir, has announced in an interview with the Spanish daily El Independiente that the Polisario Front will file in the current month a new appeal against the European Union-Morocco Agreement on Agricultural Products before the General Court of the European Union. Said Bougazi reports.
Ubi Bushraya Bashir underlined that the Polisario Front will challenge the signing of the agreement in its provisional form, and if the agreement is subsequently finalized through ratification and a vote by states and parliamentarians, the Front will challenge the new agreement in its final form. However, Ubi Bushraya hopes to be able to overturn this agreement without having to wait for a new decision from the judges. He said that following the vote in a plenary session on 26 November, a much more positive dynamic is opening up to overturn the agreement without it probably being necessary for the judges to annul it again. On that day, the European Parliament, by a single vote, did not block the controversial labeling of Sahrawi products as Moroccan, contrary to what had been established by the European courts. However, 359 MEPs voted in favor of rejection, which was the majority. In addition, another process is beginning within the European Parliament and its International Trade Committee to request an advisory opinion from the Court of Justice of the EU on the compliance of this new agreement with the rulings of 4th October 2024. We are facing a clear and blatant violation of the CGEU's decisions, the Sahrawi official said. According to him, another opportunity will arise when the agreement enters the second phase of the process, specifying that the agreement is now signed for provisional application, but the European Parliament will have to ratify it. This will be another opportunity to overturn it. He indicated in this respect that the vote should take place in the first 3 months of next year. Ubi Bushraya Bashir expressed confidence in the chances of obtaining a further annulment of the agreement before the European courts.
The deadly legacy of conflicts old and new, from Gaza to Sudan and beyond, continues to kill and maim civilians on a near daily basis, mine action workers said, as they appealed for greater support for their life-saving work in the face of deep funding cuts. Speaking on the sidelines of a key international meeting in support of landmine action taking place at UN Geneva, experts in the field explained how shrinking resources in Afghanistan and Nigeria have exposed civilians to unexploded ordnance. The situation across Sudan is also deeply concerning for stretched landmine clearance teams who fear for the 1.5 million civilians who have returned to the capital Khartoum, the initial epicenter of the ongoing conflict. UNMA's chief in Sudan, Sadiq Rashid, said despite the deteriorating security situation there, its staff is still operating to support the Sudanese population.
The ongoing operations were completely shut down, but the program was resilient. They were able to stand back as I speak now. The program, although is very, very small compared to the problem, but we are there. UNMAS is present together with other implementing partners, and we are pretty much implementing all the critical pillars of mine action. We started with an extensive awareness-raising campaign, which is still needed a lot because based on an estimation that in Sudan there are about more than 14 million people that requires mine action support. And these are a lot of people. So we focused on this. We send our available teams to the displaced population in the safer areas of Sudan, and this work continues as I speak. And we are also doing direct risk education.
Regarding Gaza, UNMA's chief there, Julius van der Voort, noted that 2 years of intensive combat had left an absolutely immense level of contamination. This directly threatens civilians and obstructs essential support to the Strip's 2.1 million residents by restricting humanitarian operations, slowing recovery efforts, and making reconstruction extremely dangerous.
Harsh living conditions are also forcing families into unsafe areas, dramatically increasing their exposure to explosive hazards. Children are amongst those that are most at risk, as in many other conflict areas, and people are being injured simply by collecting basic necessities on a day-to-day basis. Many families have no choice but to shelter near areas suspected of containing explosive ordnance because safer alternatives simply do not exist. At the same time, rising violence in the West Bank is increasing the risk of explosive ordnance contamination there as well, with explosive hazards present in densely populated areas, refugee camps, urban centers and rural areas alike. Communities are being forced to live side by side with deadly remnants of war. In Gaza itself, UNMAS works to reduce these risks by responding to the reports of explosive threats and through delivering life-saving risk education to both communities as well as to humanitarian workers.
The Palestinian presidency has said that Tuesday evening's vote at the UN, in which 151 countries voted in favor of the General Assembly resolution calling for an end to the Zionist occupation of Palestinian territory and the creation of an independent Palestinian state, is a victory for the legitimate rights of the Palestinians. The details in this report by Said Bouhazi.
In a statement released by the Wafa news agency, Palestinian presidency spokesman Nabil Abu Rudaina said that this decision is a clear message to the occupation that without the creation of a Palestinian state in accordance with international law, there will be no security, stability or prosperity in the region. He reaffirmed that the Gaza Strip, the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem form a single entity and that this is the most solid foundation for achieving peace in the region and in the world. Nabil Abu Rudaina said that the Palestinian presidency attaches great importance to this unwavering international consensus in favor of the law and the preservation of the rights, freedom and independence of the Palestinian people in their Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. As a reminder, the resolution in question was presented by Palestine, Jordan, Djibouti, Senegal, Qatar and Mauritania as part of the proceedings of the 80th session, item 35 on the agenda of the General Assembly. During the vote, 151 countries voted in favor of the resolution, 11 voted against and 11 countries abstained. The document calls for a peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question, an end to the Zionist occupation of Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, respect for the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, and the creation of an independent Palestinian state.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Stay tuned.
Welcome to this new edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. Today we will speak about multiple sclerosis, or MS. Multiple sclerosis is a potentially disabling disease of the brain and spinal cord, which is the central nervous system. In MS, the immune system attacks the protective sheath, or myelin, that covers nerve fibers and causes communication problems between your brain and the rest of your body. Eventually, the disease can cause permanent damage or deterioration of the nerves. Signs and symptoms of MS vary widely and depend on the amount of nerve damage and which nerves are affected. Some people with severe MS may lose the ability to walk independently or at all, while others may experience long periods of remission without any new symptoms. There is no cure for multiple sclerosis. However, treatments can help speed recovery from attacks, modify the course of the disease, and manage symptoms. Multiple sclerosis signs and symptoms may differ greatly from person to person and over the course of the disease depending on the location of affected nerve fibers. Symptoms often affect movements such as numbness or weakness in one or more limbs that typically occurs on one side of your body at a time, or your legs and trunk. Electric shock sensations that occur with certain neck movements, especially bending the neck forward. Tremor, lack of coordination, or unsteady gait. Vision problems are also common, including partial or complete loss of vision, usually in one eye at a time, often with pain during eye movement, prolonged double vision, blurry vision. Multiple sclerosis symptoms may also include slurred speech, fatigue, dizziness, tingling or pain in parts of your body, problems with sexual, bowel, or bladder function. You should go and see a doctor if you experience any of the above symptoms for unknown reasons. Most people with MS have relapsing remitting disease course. They experience periods of new symptoms or relapses that develop over days or weeks and usually improve partially or completely. These relapses are followed by quiet periods of disease remission that can last months or even years. Small increases in body temperature can temporarily worsen signs and symptoms of MS, but these aren't considered true disease relapses. At least 50% of those with relapsing remitting MS eventually develop a steady progression of symptoms with or without periods of remission within 10 to 20 years from disease onset. This is known as secondary progressive MS. The worsening of symptoms usually includes problems with mobility and gait. The rate of disease progression varies greatly among people with secondary progressive MS. Some people with MS experience a gradual onset and steady progression of signs and symptoms without any relapses, known as primary progressive MS. The cause of multiple sclerosis is unknown. It is considered an autoimmune disease in which the body's immune system attacks its own tissues. In the case of MS, this immune system malfunction destroys the fatty substance that coats and protects nerve fibers in the brain and spinal cord. It is commonly called myelin. Myelin can be compared to the insulation coating on electrical wires. When the protective myelin is damaged and the nerve fiber is exposed, the messages that travel along that nerve fiber may be slowed or blocked. It isn't clear why MS develops in some people and not others. A combination of genetics and environmental factors appears to be responsible for that. However, the following factors may increase your risk of developing multiple sclerosis. Age. MS can occur at any age, but onset usually occurs around 20 and 40 years of age. However, younger and older people can be affected. Sex. Women are more than 2 to 3 times as likely as men to have relapsing remitting MS. Family history. If one of your parents or siblings has had MS, you are at high risk of developing the disease. Certain infections. A variety of viruses have been linked to MS, including Epstein-Barr, the virus that causes infectious mononucleosis. Race. White people, particularly those of Northern European descent, are at highest risk of developing MS. People of Asian, African, or Native American descent have the lowest risk. Climate. MS is far more common in countries with temperate climates, including Canada, the northern United States, New Zealand, southeastern Australia, and Europe. Vitamin D. Having low levels of vitamin D and low exposure to sunlight is associated with a greater risk of MS. Certain autoimmune diseases. You have a slightly high risk of developing MS if you have other autoimmune disorders such as thyroid disease, pernicious anemia, psoriasis, type 1 diabetes, or inflammatory bowel disease. Smoking. Smokers who experience an initial event of symptoms that may signal MS are more likely than non-smokers to develop a second event that confirms relapsing remitting MS. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. Do join us next week for a fresh edition of our program. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.
مع إذاعة الجزائر الدولية.